if he's going to insist that we have a joint session of Congress so he can deliver a major speech on the economy, he ought to have done his homework and prepared the bill. Keep in mind that Speaker Boehner gave him an additional day. Originally, he wanted this speech on Wednesday. Well, we gave him an additional day. He still doesn't have his ducks in a row. He still doesn't have his bill drafted. He still hasn't introduced it or presented it to the House and the Senate. And now one day later, we still don't have it. So, I'm disappointed, and I don't know how to fathom it. I've never been around someone in public office like this before who insists that something is urgent, and yet the reason we can't address it is because the person who insists it's urgent has not yet drafted it.
You know what I got from the speech last night, and I'm not speaking as a partisan here or any kind of political operator. That's not how I am. I'm an independent journalist. I pride myself on my ability to say what I want, when I want, and how I want. Now, the president just doesn't seem serious about the dilemma that we face as a nation, and since he likes to model himself as a global citizen, which he said while he was Senator Obama, campaigner Obama, he also seems very detached from the problems the world is facing, both economically and socially. Now, there's a problem all around. Now, case in point to what the point I'm trying to make. So last night he had Jeffrey Immelt, the head of GE, who he appointed to be his basically his private sector czar. A little flashback for the audience. GE didn't pay any taxes on the $5 billion that they paid in profit here last year, which means that I paid more in taxes than all of GE. Now the First Lady invited labor boss Richard Trumka to be her special guest. Now, what kind of feeling should that give the American people, or what kind of feeling does it give you as a congressman when you're getting orders from the top down and he's inviting people there that are kind of obstructing or not helping in the case of helping our economy recover?
Well, again, it's just another one of the enigmas. I'm not a mind reader. I can't get into why he says one thing so often and then does another. I wish I could. I wish he would get his counselors and advisors to convince him that consistency is important. But we in Congress, we're having to deal with the hand that's been dealt us, and Barack Obama is President of the United States. So if he is going to wait to deliver us the American Jobs Act bill, well, then we're going to have to wait to receive it. We have no choice.
I was actually tweeting last night because since Obama's been elected, I mean, the market's been in flux for a while before Obama was elected, even though those 2 months before when the economy really collapsed. Now, I was tweeting last night about, during the speech and saying I kind of wish that the markets were open while he was making the speech because we can actually see how the economy or the people that are moving the markets are actually reacting to what he's saying. And when he does make speeches or press conferences during the day when the market is open, I've noticed that the market tends to go down when he speaks. And, again, that's not speaking as a partisan, that's strictly fact. Today, the market had an opportunity to respond to him and the global issues that we face. The Dow Jones was down over 300 points today, which is the largest drop since that wacky week we had about 3 weeks ago. Do you think the markets are going to continue to react negatively to the speeches that Obama makes? Because, like you said, he hasn't put a formal proposal out there yet, at least for you guys to review. But do you think it's going to continue to react negatively because there's an era of uncertainty? Or do you think the era of uncertainty is better than the certainty that taxes might go up or more spending is down the pipeline or the Fed is going to print more money? What do you think is driving the fear in the market?
Well, the uncertainty is always a factor, but in this particular instance, if you go to the White House's website, there is a synopsis or fact sheet that they put out about the American Jobs Act, and that eliminates to a large degree the uncertainty as to what the bill is supposed to be once the White House gets around to drafting it. And the problem is that it's not substantive. The bill does not address the underlying problems that face America and its economy. And to the contrary, rather than fixing it, this bill could actually make things worse. When you get right down to it, the president has not proposed a way to pay for it, which suggests that he wants to borrow another $450 billion to pay for the American Jobs Act. Well, that's $450 billion that we don't have. It's irresponsible. It increases the likelihood that the federal government will ultimately go into insolvency and bankruptcy, and that is a definite big-time job killer. So this may be much like what we saw a couple of years ago with the so-called stimulus bill, in which the president promised the creation of millions of jobs, promised a much lower unemployment rate than we now face as a country, and then it fell flat on its face. And this is similar. I have gone over the synopsis that the White House has put out, and I don't see very much in there that is going to address the underlying problems in our economy that must be addressed. It's almost like window dressing. It's all short-term. There's no long-term solution in this bill.
I want to go back to what you were saying, because the president said multiple times yesterday that the bill is paid for. Now, I was reading yesterday that he intends to, quote, pay for this with cuts that were made, but you can't pay for something with cuts that were made that were, supposed to be cutting federal spending. Now, you're saying it can't be paid for at all, or it's not paid for yet. Now, I'm not understanding how come the president is saying one thing and you're saying the complete other. What's the actual truth behind this? Is there money to pay for this?
Well, the truth of the matter is that the president has not yet spelled out exactly how he would pay for these measures. Basically, in a more general sense, he said, well, the super committee needs to come up with the money. Well, what is the super committee doing that the president wants expanded on? Well, he wants the super committee to come up with a plan whereby over the next 10 years we pay back through additional cuts in the federal budget the money that the president wants to borrow now. Okay? So what does that mean over the next year or two? It means that it absolutely will add to the deficit. It will add to America's debt. It will do so at the rate of roughly $450 billion. And then hopefully that money will be paid back over a 10-year period of time. But if you pay real close attention to the language not only of the White House and President Obama, but also in Washington general, there aren't any real cuts that are taking place or that have been proposed so far, not as the American people and most people around the world understand the word cut. Okay? What they're talking about is a reduction in the rate of spending what they wanted to spend. So we're still increasing the debt on an annual basis. We're still having trillion-dollar deficits as far as the eye can see. It's just that those deficits are not quite as bad as they otherwise would have been. And that's not fixing the problem. And I think that's some of the wordsmanship or gamesmanship that we saw with the president's speech last night, where he says it will not add to the deficit. And that's a direct quote, where he says, quote, everything in this bill will be paid for, everything, end quote. Well, yeah, everything will be paid for. That's true. But he did not specify where the money will come from. Are we going to do it by borrowing? Are we going to do it by tax increases? Are we going to do it by some other mechanism? And he has not specified that. And I would note, too, that his side of the fence, the Democrat side of the fence, has been bashing the Republicans on Social Security and Medicare. Well, he uses the phrase payroll taxes, okay? He says he wants to cut payroll taxes. What are payroll taxes? Well, they are the Social Security and Medicare taxes that fund those programs that prevent them from going insolvent and bankrupt. So now the president is wanting to cut the source by which we pay for the Social Security and Medicare programs for our elderly. Yet he wants to use the phrase payroll taxes instead of being candid with the American people and saying Social Security taxes or Medicare taxes, depending upon which of those payroll taxes he wants to cut.